Should Florida State even listen any further to what the ACC has to offer?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Today's show is going to feature recruiting on the back end. I have some great news about Florida State's recruiting efforts. I'm actually very excited to talk about it. But first, I wanted to clarify my thoughts, and I want to get your thoughts based on the most recent intel that's come out over the last 24 to 48 hours with Florida State in the ACC, Clemson. There's discussion about NC State and possibly North Carolina taking a jump to the SEC, how that would work. All of that first before we hit the recruiting button. So here's first my take. Number one, while everybody, pretty much myself included, don't have a lot of respect for the ACC administration based on how they've handled things in terms of Clemson, Miami, Florida State, to a certain degree, North Carolina too, that's a big brand. There still needs to be at least a little bit of listening on what you can get from them, and you just use that as a bargaining tool with whoever you want to go with. I'm not saying stay with the ACC, just listen and learn. Do I think it's a great deal to stay with the ACC? No. On the other side of that coin is the unfortunate. The grant of rights is still there. Whether we want to hear it or not, Florida State is stuck. If they weren't, they would have paid it out if they thought it was worthwhile. It's not. They're still in the conference. That is reality. And nobody, and I mean nobody, but Florida State or any other school in the conference has anybody to blame but themselves because they put pen to paper. You signed it? You deal with it. The ACC/ESPN outbid them in terms of how to use the lawyers, how to use all the insights for the money. They figured it out one way or the other, and they flat out snookered the ACC higher brass. Prove me wrong, but I see everybody trying to get out, so I don't think that's going to be very easy to do. With that being stated again, I think Florida State should listen to what ESPN and all these different ideas they have about this so-called bigger games out of conference, Notre Dame or Michigan or Texas, whatever it is, that's fine. But they still have to do three things for me to make it work. And I want everybody to comment down below, YouTube, wherever you may be, on what you think. But here's my take on it. Number one, there still needs to be some sort of financial gain that Florida State's talked about consistently. I talked about this on yesterday's show. I just want to hit the highlights here. They get about 15% of the TV numbers from the conference, just Florida State, yet they're getting paid a little over 7%. Well, I'm not saying they need to be guaranteed 30% or something crazy. You earn what you get, and there should be a minimum 10, 12%, I think, is conservative for Florida State's brand because they bring in so many eyeballs. Same thing with Clemson, same thing with Miami, etc. TV, those kind of teams will sell more. North Carolina, now they got Belichick. You could argue some with that. That's probably the hardest one. But again, some of these schools, they get more. That's one. Two, with the bowl games, I don't know how they work it right now, but in similar fashion to overall with the TV, how many times, and I'm not picking on them, but how many times is Wake going to go to a bowl game more than Florida State over, let's say, a 10, maybe 20-year period? During a 3-year stretch of that, they might go to 3 and Florida State goes to 2. But then after that, Wake Forest is going to have 4 years in a row where they're 4 and 8. It's Wake Forest. Florida State needs to get more of the revenue from that too. Same thing with Clemson, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's not just TV. You must strike a chord in regards to how the bowl money works. And finally, the playoff money, it's the same thing as the bowls. If Florida State is good enough to go to the playoffs one year, or Clemson, what have you, the elite teams, they need more of that cash. Wake Forest ain't going to the playoff, folks. Virginia's not going to the playoff. I can see Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech once in a while. It should probably be 3 tiers until otherwise proven. And if you win so much, you can put it in the contract. you know what? Hey, Virginia, you've had an incredible 5-year run, and I don't think this is going to happen, but you've averaged 9 wins, and you had 2 seasons with 10-win seasons, and you made the playoff. You move up, you get more money because you've earned it. If a school does that, by all means, again, you earn what you've achieved. These other teams getting similar money, to me, is hogwash. What say you? Florida State fans, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I just wanted to reiterate my take on it. Had a few people comment on YouTube that maybe they didn't understand me, but you earn what you get is the American way, and it should be that way in college football, the Noles included. And I also think that goes for the bottom of the rung. Look, if you all suck, you shouldn't get as much money. If you're a bad employee at AT&T, are they going to pay you as much as the guy that's the top sales rep or something? No. Why would it be any different in college football? Isn't college athletics supposed to be supporting the whole idea of like improving as a person and everything else? Well, if you do well, you're rewarded. This is not that hard. I'm just not sure how that's going to work with just scheduling better games out of conference and stuff. It's not going to make up the difference. They're going to have to show me. If those would be the 3 areas I talked about there. The playoff obviously is huge. Bowls are a big deal. And then the TV money, like the percentage. Not one of them, not 2 of them. All 3 have to be guaranteed in writing if I'm Florida State, or I'm still going to keep with the lawsuit. That's how I would do it. Again, I want to hear what you have to say and why. If you think there's a different avenue, please share. If you think there is something that Florida State could do that I didn't mention, again, fire away. I'm just giving my opinion on it, but that's just part of the deal. Here's the other extra. And I've only read so much of this because I'm not believing it as much as others. I just want to mention it. There's talk about NC State tagging along with UNC because of the Belichick, and the SEC would love to have UNC because of the basketball, and it's a big brand school, all that stuff. And Bill Belichick adds something. Does anybody really believe Bill is going to be in Chapel Hill more than 2 to 3 years? Come on. By the time they would be in the league, he'd be gone anyway. If they're trying to go by that, they're idiotic. There is no way they're going to get them out of it. Remember, they're in the grand rights too. If you give them a special deal, you got to give the same special deal to Clemson, Miami, or Florida State, or anybody else that would want to explore. I'm sure ESPN would love to cheat the code here, keep the ACC the way it is, and take North Carolina and drop it into the SEC and take Bill while he's in the league for ratings. It's not how it works. Lawyers won't allow that to happen. So my question is, why is everybody really thinking that's going to happen? UNC signed the stupid grant of rights too. They're in the same freaking situation. This is not hard. If UNC's leaving, it's going to be a while. Unless they got money they're going to throw away that I don't know about. I've heard every total possible, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not going to happen. Florida State's not going to get left behind by UNC and NC State. There's been talk about that on various Florida State message boards and websites, blogs, etc. It's not going to happen. Florida State is still battling, and there's different things they can do. There's been talk about 2031 is they're trying to negotiate a lower total, for lack of a better phrase, on what the grant of rights buyout would be if they stick with the ESPN proposed contract. I think that's a good idea. They still need to get down to the nitty-gritty, and I need to see the exact numbers on what they would be before I'd be happy with it one way or the other. But again, final point here. You have to listen to learn. Find out what they offer. Use that information short-term and long-term, because when you go to the SEC, Big Ten, whatever it is, maybe they go independent for a while. I don't know. Florida State needs to have all of the opportunities it can get to learn from these contracts so they don't make any future mistakes. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how this impacts recruiting, the Florida State season, and what's going on now. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. This year, Game Time makes it even easier for unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. If you have not tried out Game Time, make sure you do. It filters out all the fluff and shows you all the great deals so you can focus on what matters, and that's being there at the game. Just so you know, that's part of this overall thought process about Game Time. I talk about it all the time on this show. And as I go through the Game Time app to find tickets, if you just click on the little tab, it's right there in front of you on your phone, Game Time Picks is the easiest way for you to get the quick and dirty down on what's going on with the prices, the best that you can get right there. So whether it's the NFL Super Bowl, whether it's an NBA game, maybe you're going to take your wife to a play, maybe it's a musical for your kids, whatever it is, Game Time's got something for you that you can use. And there's also a really great feature that I haven't mentioned in a while, and I should. That is the ability to see your seat, or seats as it may be, right from your phone or tablet. You click on it, it will show you from your seat to the venue, to the pitcher's mound, to the basketball court, whatever it may be, exactly what you're getting. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. How does all of the conference alignment stuff, or realignment, I should say, how does it impact Florida State, a Michigan, a Texas, USC? Even if you're not directly in it, how does it impact things? It's massive because of recruiting. I get this question once in a while when I'm on the recruiting trail at a 7-on-7 event, an Under Armour camp. It could be OT7, whatever it is, talking to parents, talking to different people. The parents in particular, not necessarily players, but the parents in particular, they want to know what goes on long term. Where's my kid going to be? Where are the games going to be? Am I going to be able to get there? So yes, Florida State being involved in the ACC realignment shuffle is a big deal. It just depends on the individual or individuals. The high school coach may be involved with that discussion. There's a lot of different points with it. And it's a revolving door of information because just like yesterday, for those of you who didn't watch, go back and check it out. ESPN released an article. A couple of writers did a great job, give them props, that they are going to probably keep Florida State and Clemson at least short term, if not long term. There's even discussion about them dropping the lawsuit. We'll see if that happens. I got to see it to believe it. But in doing so, how would that change recruiting? You're still more local if you do that. So some parents would like that. There are other people who are like, you know what, we'll put up with the travel, but we want our kid to be in the Big Ten or the SEC for more exposure. It's a fascinating topic and one that I come across quite often. We've got the Atlanta Under Armour event coming up very soon, not this weekend, but next. It will be the elite players in the country. It's the best Under Armour event of the year every year. Everybody agrees on it because that area has the most big linemen that end up going to the National Football League. Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, get some Florida kids in there, a few South Carolina kids, North Carolina. It's tremendous. I guarantee you there will be discussion. It could be somebody like Chad Simmons I'm talking to. It could be a parent. It could be somebody who works at Under Armour. But how this conference realignment stuff shuffles around impacts a lot of different people. So to that point, let's jump over to recruiting. I have good news. Florida State is not only doing well, they are doing really well with their junior day stuff. They have another one this weekend. And to be honest with you, I'm not surprised that they're doing well. But as I went through the list, and I was just looking at the 24/7 Noles list, and I was looking at X and different platforms, who's coming, who's interested, what they say, watch some film. And I had a lot of different thoughts about it that are surprising to me for this quick of a turnaround. I have been a very negative guy throughout the time I've done this podcast about Florida State's high school recruiting efforts. This upcoming list, this next one, you can argue it's better than one of the other junior days or not. That's up to you. But I look at it from a little broader perspective. I'm going to read off some names, who they are, why they're important here in just a second. But note the following as I go over that list. You're going to hear about players that have offers from elite programs. You're going to hear about several offensive linemen that have big-time offers, some in-state, some not. You're going to hear about quarterbacks they're in on that are underclassmen. You're going to hear about them getting out nationally in addition to locally. I want you to think with that base of information, when was the last time with high school recruiting, as a Florida State fan, were you like, you know what? Florida State's out ahead of the curve here. How long ago has that been? It was for Norvell. That I can help you with. What's going on now is different than at any point. It really is. And I will discuss it in a lot of different ways, but the easiest thing that I can do is just give you a few names, talk about some of the kids that I've seen and what they do and why they're important, and just how Florida State has changed its recruiting dynamics. You got to give credit where it's due. As I went through this list, I was a little bit, I don't want to say shocked, but it's a big change, and it's a very positive change. So, number one, maybe the most underrated kid in the state of Florida for the class of 26, rising seniors from their juniors right now, is Larry Miles. He's a receiver at Orlando Jones. He catches everything. He's a really natural route runner in terms of getting guys off balance as defense backs. He could play slot or play outside. And to be honest, he's a stick mover. Got a little Kes McCorvey to him. He's a little smaller than that, but it's the same principle. He finds grass and he makes first downs, and he's the moneymaker on third downs. He plays with Darion Coleman, the quarterback that's committed to Miami, and that helps, don't get me wrong, but he's just always open. He's just always open. Now, most of the recruiting services still have him as a 3-star, but a bunch of us, when we were at the Battle Miami tournament, the 7-on-7 tournament that kicks off the 7-on season every year in South Florida, he was dynamic. His ranking is going to stay 3-star. He's going to end up being a kid that ends up pretty much wherever he wants when this is all done. Just remember I said that. Florida State's getting him up to campus, and I know that Darion would like to have him at UM. You'd rather have him on your roster instead of your arch rival. Just remember that name. Again, his quarterback's going to Miami, but he's visiting FSU this weekend. That's good news for Florida State. Samuel Roseborough, Clearwater High School. FSU's had some decent success in the Tampa area over the years, but has it been as much? I don't know. Debatable. Probably not as much as they should, I guess is the best way to say that. I'm going to go no. We all know that Florida State struggles with O-line recruiting until otherwise proven. This is a kid you need. The state of Florida is not always great at O-line. It's a little better group this year, especially when you consider the IMG kids. But even those players aside, Roseborough is one of the best players in the state of Florida. He's 6'5", 290-ish. He could play inside, maybe play right tackle. Getting kids like this on campus is something that I have complained about for a long time. Florida State has done a nice job of accumulating more linemen that are truly talented enough to play at an upper level. This is a kid that could be that guy. The head coach at Clearwater is a really good football coach. The guys that do a good job in general in that area. It's not surprising that I heard his name. One of my buddies is an O-line trainer in that area, and he brought him up to me. This is a good sign for Florida State. Getting big offensive linemen on campus hasn't been something they've done a very good job of in the last 5-6 years. Love to see that. An additional, there's 2 other kids, among other O-linemen that are coming. This shows you how wide a net that Florida State's spreading with O-line. They've got a kid from Archbishop Hoban in Akron, Ohio. It's a tradition-rich program in that state that's coming down. His name is Sam Greer. He's got offers from a bunch of programs. Getting a kid from Akron to go to Tallahassee for junior day, that's a good sign. Also, Grant Kitchens. He's from Louisville, Mississippi, 6'8", 300 pounds, pure offensive tackle. Another kid coming into play for Florida State's junior days. Look, getting these guys on campus early, these out-of-state guys, will help you get them back for an official visit. When we come back, we'll finish talking about some of the junior days and then a reclassification for a player that Florida State was heavy in the mix for class of 26, Javari Flowers. We'll finish up the show on that. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Florida State's junior day will continue this weekend, these 3-4 weekends in a row. And this is the best that I have seen it since I've covered Florida State, or even, quite honestly, since Norvell was the head man in Tallahassee. So congrats to all them, everybody on the staff. They've done a nice job. And here are a couple other guys to note. And we're getting into the rivalry stuff. This is where I really started watching the Florida State, the Miami Florida State, all these rivalries. recruiting was a big part of it. Florida State went and visited Jordan Campbell recently. He's the linebacker at Carroll City, might be the best linebacker in Florida for the class of 26, committed to the Canes. He's coming up for a visit. This is a national top 100 kid by anybody's account. Really fast, so needs to add weight, add strength, but he fits the typical South Florida kid. I'm telling you, this is important. It's ironic. Luther Campbell, I'm sure you probably know who he is, big Miami fan. He's, to my knowledge, still involved there at that school. He's a big Miami guy. It's ironic that a kid from Carroll City is coming up for a visit, but that's a guy that's on the list. We'll see if he makes it in because it's a long way, but that's interesting. Also, speaking of still making it in, Jarius Rogers committed to Syracuse recently. He's the pass rusher out of Fleming Island, just outside of Jacksonville. Him coming up, assuming he makes it, again, these are junior day lists. It's not ironclad, but if he makes it, that's a good sign. You cannot lose recruits to Syracuse that you really covet. Florida State would like to have Rogers. 6'5", 200 plus pounds. He's a little thin right now, but so was Devon Kearse, Justin Tuck, a lot of guys that were really good coming out of high school just as athletes, maybe played linebacker in high school, then eventually moved to being a down lineman. That's what he could be. And in the 3-4 defense that you're going to be looking at least from a base perspective, probably more 3-3-5 today's era. But Tony White's defense, he'll be the same position as what James Williams plays. The outside kind of Lawrence Taylor position. So Jarius Rogers is a kid. If he makes it to campus, that's good news. Outside the state again, and I find this interesting because Florida State hasn't had a lot of success there. The state of Tennessee, Tyreek King, Catholic high school in Knoxville, it's a very good program, committed to the Vols, not exactly shocking. He's a top 100, top 150 kid as a wide receiver. Getting him on campus is a good sign. I mean, Tennessee's got an attractive program. They've got some quarterbacks on campus that are good. They throw the ball around. Just to get him on campus is a sign of good things to come. And also, if you're going to play the defense that Tony White wants and Pot Roast would like to have with his defensive line, you need length. Well, why not recruit Buford High School? It's one of the best programs in Dixie, up just outside of Atlanta, northeast of Atlanta. 6'6", 230, Ben Mubinga. He will be visiting, among other players. Again, this is a really good list, and I'm just giving a snippet here. There's like 30 kids, maybe more, that are coming, but Florida State has a nice list of players that are going to be on campus again this weekend. They've done a great job. They deserve a tip of the cap from myself and from everybody else from getting these guys there, so that's great news. And I want to finish with this. Javari Flowers, Miami Northwestern, obviously famous program. They just won state again. Teddy went home and they got him a title. I think that they're going to do a good job recruiting South Florida because they got Coop now on the staff. They still got Pastor Tay. They got a lot of different guys that have experience in recruiting South Florida. And of course, it's still in the state regardless, but you're battling against your arch rival for a lot of these kids. Well, here's the caveat with Javari Flowers. He's reclassifying, allegedly, to 25. I assume that it's going to happen, but his recruitment will be a little different. He has till the 1st of April or so, I'm told, to make his decision. Okay. Because of that, I don't know when his official visits will be or how it will work, but Florida State, Miami, Georgia, Oregon are 4 of the schools that people should know about. And who is he? I've talked about him a little bit on the show. Who is Javari Flowers, though? 5'11", 180 pounds or so, corner that's sub 10.5, 100 meters, plays at Miami Northwestern, starting corner for their program that won a state title this past season. Getting into Miami in general is vital for Florida State. It's always been vital. Lamont Green or whoever it is they've always had different players from down that area that were really good. If they have a great season, how many times did Florida State not have a kid that was from the Broward Data Line or from a Miami Central or a Carroll City or a Northwestern or a Palmetto, whatever it was? They always had somebody from one of those schools that came to Florida State and was a key cog in Florida State having a great year. They have to get some of those kids. I'm curious to see what Flowers does. He's one of the best corners in the class of 26. I have him in my top 10 for class of 26. If it does go through and he's 25, let's see what Florida State can do because they need to get kids like him. really, really good prospect. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. If you would follow me on X at FBScout_Florida, hit that like button, that notification bell, and subscribe to this podcast and share it. Thank you again, and I will see you again soon.